15 years ago, my best friend since high school, David Mitchell, inherited his father's small IT consulting firm. He called me right after I graduated with my computer science degree and said, "Mark, come work with me. We'll build something amazing together." I trusted him completely. We'd been friends since we were 16, so I said yes without hesitation. Those first few years were incredible. David handled the business side while I focused on client relationships and technical solutions. We were a perfect team. I poured everything into that company: 60-hour weeks, weekends, holidays. I learned every client's business inside and out. I knew their families, remembered birthdays, showed up for casual check-ins just to maintain relationships. I became the face of Mitchell Tech Solutions. Over 15 years, we grew from 8 employees to 45. Annual revenue jumped from $800,000 to over $12 million. I personally brought in 70% of our major clients. David knew this. Everyone knew this. But David changed as the company grew. He became obsessed with appearances, bought a Porsche, moved into a massive house. His wife Jessica started wearing designer everything and posting about their blessed life on Instagram. Meanwhile, I was still driving my 2015 Honda, living in a modest apartment, making $120,000 a year plus bonuses. Good money, but nowhere close to what David made as owner. I didn't care though. I figured we were friends, and eventually I'd get my share. I was so fucking naive. 8 months ago, things shifted. David started having meetings without me that he used to always include me in. Just boring financial stuff, he'd say when I asked. Jessica suddenly became cold toward me. At last year's Christmas party, she made a pointed comment about people who don't understand the sacrifices of building a business when I brought my girlfriend Amanda. Then there was David's cousin, Brandon Cooper. David brought him in 2 years ago as a strategic consultant fresh out of business school. Brandon was slick, always in expensive suits, talking about optimizing and maximizing shareholder value. He'd sit in on my client meetings, taking notes, asking questions afterward. "How did you get the Thompson Industries account? What's your secret with the Martinez Group?" I thought he was trying to learn. I spent hours teaching him everything: client management, relationship building, all my strategies. I introduced him to clients, brought him to meetings, vouched for him. God, I was such an idiot. 6 months ago, things got strange. Conversations would stop when I entered rooms. Brandon and David were constantly locked in his office with the door closed. One night working late, I accidentally found a file on the shared drive. Restructuring_plan_confidential. Docs. I opened it. My stomach dropped. It was Brandon's plan to fire me. Employee M, 15 years, $145,000 salary. Client relationships can be transferred to lower-cost staff. Recommendation: termination with minimal severance. Savings: $100,000 plus annually. They've been planning this for months. The document outlined their strategy. Gradually introduce Brandon to my clients. Position it as succession planning. Then execute my termination once relationships transferred. That's why Brandon had been shadowing me. He wasn't learning. He was replacing me. I photographed every page with shaking hands. The next morning, I confronted David. I saw the restructuring document, the one about eliminating me. His face went white, then cold. "Mark, you went through confidential files. Don't. You're planning to fire me after 15 years. After everything I built." He walked to his window. When he turned back, the warmth I'd known for 20 years was gone. "It's business, Mark. Nothing personal. The company needs to evolve. Lower overhead costs. I've made you millions, David. And you've been well compensated. You're an employee, Mark. You've always been an employee. This isn't your company. It's mine." Those words destroyed me. All those years of friendship, of feeling like partners, it meant nothing. I walked out without another word. For the next month, I played along. I smiled, attended meetings, introduced Brandon to more clients. But I was documenting everything. Every email, every client interaction, every conversation. I also started having quiet lunches with our biggest clients. Just checking in, I'd say. I asked how they felt about Brandon. Most were polite but honest. "He's fine, but we work with you, Mark. You're the reason we stayed with Mitchell Tech all these years." That's when I realized something crucial. The clients were loyal to me, not the company. David didn't understand that. He thought the Mitchell Tech brand was what mattered. But in consulting, relationships are everything. I started making plans. I consulted with a lawyer about non-competes. Turns out, I'd never actually signed one. David had always said, "We don't need that formal stuff between us, buddy." That casual trust he'd exploited was about to become his biggest mistake. I reached out quietly to 3 former colleagues who'd left Mitchell Tech over the years, talented people who'd been frustrated with David's management style. I asked if they'd be interested in a new venture. All 3 said yes immediately. Then came the board meeting. June 15th. I'll never forget that date. David called everyone into the conference room. All senior staff, about 12 people. Brandon sat beside him, smirking. Jessica was there too, which was unusual since she didn't work for the company. David stood up. "I want to thank everyone for their hard work. We're entering an exciting new phase of growth. But growth requires change, and change means making difficult decisions." He looked directly at me. "Mark, we've appreciated your 15 years of service. But we've decided to go in a different direction. Today will be your last day. We're offering you a $10,000 severance package." The room went dead silent. $10,000. After 15 years. After building a $12 million company. Sarah from accounting gasped. Tom from development looked shocked. But no one said anything. They were all too afraid for their own jobs. "You're firing me?" I said quietly. "Just like that?" "It's what's best for the company," David said, not meeting my eyes. "Brandon will be taking over your client relationships. We've already prepared the transition plan." Jessica actually smiled. That's what got me. She smiled like she'd won something. I stood up slowly. Everyone was staring at me, waiting for me to explode, to argue, to beg. But I didn't. I just said, "All right, I'll clear out my desk." The disappointment on David's face was obvious. He'd wanted a scene. He'd wanted to look like the strong CEO making tough calls while I fell apart. I walked to my office, packed my personal items into a box, and left. No goodbyes. No angry speeches. Just silence. David had no idea what was coming. Walking out of that building felt surreal. 15 years of my life ended with a $10,000 check and a fake, "It's just business" speech. I sat in my car in the parking lot for almost an hour, just staring at the steering wheel, feeling completely hollow. Amanda called me. I told her what happened. She said, "You need to fight this. Go to HR. Go to a lawyer." HR was a joke in that company. Basically David's cousin's wife, Emily, doing paperwork. Still, a week later they sent me the official termination letter. Buried in the email thread was something I wasn't supposed to see. A forwarded message from Brandon to Emily. "Make sure the paperwork states performance concerns and client dissatisfaction as the rationale," he wrote. "We need a documented record in case he tries anything." Client dissatisfaction? I had the highest retention and satisfaction numbers in the company. They were rewriting history to justify what they did. I forwarded that email to my personal account and saved it in 3 different places. Then I checked LinkedIn. Brandon had already updated his profile. Director of Client Strategy at Mitchell Tech Solutions. My title. My role. Less than a week after they canned me. 2 weeks later, I heard from Sarah from accounting. She texted me, "You free to talk?" We met at a small coffee shop across town where no one from the office ever went. She looked exhausted. "It's bad," she said. "Worse than you think." She told me that after I left, David and Brandon started telling people internally that I'd been dropping the ball for months, that I'd lost my edge, that clients were getting restless and they needed someone more aggressive to lead accounts. I said, "You know that's not true." She nodded. "Everyone knows. But they're afraid. Brandon is already pushing for more cuts. He wants to get rid of anyone who questions him." Then she said something that made my skin crawl. "Also, I need to tell you this." Brandon said in a meeting, "Now that the old guard is gone, we can finally stop giving away discounts just because Mark likes people. He said you were too emotional, too attached. He made it sound like your relationships were a liability." 15 years of caring about clients turned into ammunition against me. I went home that night and opened a blank document. At the top I wrote, "What really happened at Mitchell Tech?" I didn't know if it would be a lawsuit, a report to some authority, or a Reddit post. I just knew I needed everything written down: dates, emails, meetings, names. While I was typing, my phone buzzed. It was an email from one of my biggest former clients, Thompson Industries. Subject line, "Checking in. Hey Mark, heard there were some changes over at Mitchell. Everything okay? Brandon reached out, but we'd prefer to hear from you directly." I stared at that email for a long time, feeling something shift inside me. For the first time since getting fired, I didn't feel helpless. I felt dangerous. I met with Thompson Industries COO, Lisa Carter, the next day at a quiet restaurant near their office. She looked genuinely worried. I said, "Yeah, there were some changes." She said, "Brandon called us. He tried to pitch a new strategic package at a 20% higher rate and kept name-dropping David. It felt off. We've always worked with you, Mark. What's going on?" For a second, I considered protecting David. Habit, I guess. 15 years of loyalty doesn't die overnight. But then I remembered that document calling me redundant and recommending my termination like I was a broken printer. I said, "I won't badmouth them. But I will tell you this. I'm no longer with Mitchell Tech. Not by choice. And everything you've gotten from me there, the level of attention, the extra hours, the fixes at 11 p.m., that was me, not them." Lisa leaned forward. "Are you starting something new?" The question caught me off guard. I hadn't said anything about starting a company yet, not out loud. But the second she asked, the answer came out of my mouth before I could stop it. I said, "Yeah, I am." She held my gaze for a long moment, then nodded like a decision had just clicked into place for her. "Send me your proposal when it's ready." Off the record, our loyalty is to the person who picks up the phone when everything's on fire. That's been you, not David. When I left that lunch, my heart was pounding. On the drive home, I called one of the ex-colleagues I'd spoken to before, Ryan, a brilliant network engineer David had lowballed on salary until he quit. I said, "If I really do this, if I actually start my own firm, are you in?" He didn't hesitate. "Tell me when and where." That night, Amanda and I sat on the couch with takeout boxes between us and legal pads spread all over the coffee table. She said, "You've been building David's dream for 15 years. Maybe it's time you build your own." I said, "What if I fail? What if no one follows me?" She said, "Then you fail on your own terms. But I don't think you will." I barely slept. I kept replaying David's words, "You've always been an employee," over and over. Every time, the sting hurt a little less and turned into something sharper, colder. Resolve. I filed the LLC paperwork 3 days later. Carson Solutions, named after my late grandfather who'd taught me that your word matters more than any contract. Simple logo, clean website, same services Mitchell Tech offered, but with one key difference: actual human care. Ryan came on board immediately. So did Monica, a project manager who'd left Mitchell Tech 6 months earlier after David cut her bonus without explanation. Then Jake, a cybersecurity specialist who'd been freelancing. Within 2 weeks, I had a team of 4. We worked out of my apartment initially, laptops on the kitchen table, conference calls from the living room. It felt scrappy and desperate and absolutely terrifying. My savings were draining fast. Amanda was supportive, but I could see the worry in her eyes when bills came. Then I started reaching out to former clients. Not aggressively, just friendly check-ins. "Hey, I've moved on from Mitchell Tech, started my own thing. If you ever need anything, I'm here." The responses surprised me. Within a week, 3 mid-sized clients reached out asking for proposals. One of them, Martinez Group, was blunt. "Brandon called us 4 times last week trying to upsell services we don't need. He doesn't listen. You always did." I sent them a proposal at their current rate. No markup, no games. They signed within 48 hours. Then Thompson Industries came through. Lisa sent a contract for a 6-month project worth $180,000. In the email she wrote, "We're betting on you, Mark. Don't make us regret it." I literally cried reading that email. Amanda found me in my office at midnight, staring at the screen with tears on my face. She said, "What's wrong?" I said, "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right for the first time in months." By week 3, I had 5 clients. By week 6, 8. All former Mitchell Tech accounts. I wasn't poaching them with aggressive sales tactics. They were coming to me because the relationships were real. Meanwhile, I heard through Sarah that things at Mitchell Tech were getting messy. Brandon was panicking because clients weren't responding to his calls. David was spending his days in damage control meetings. They'd assumed my departure would be seamless. They were wrong. One night, around 11 p.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. When I did, David's voice came through, tight and strained. "Mark, we need to talk." I said, "About what, David?" There was a pause. Then he said, "You know what? You're taking our clients." I almost laughed. I'm not taking anything. They're choosing to work with me. There's a difference. He said, this is unethical, Mark. These are Mitchell Tech relationships. We built them together. The audacity. I took a breath to keep my voice steady. I said, no, David. I built them. You fired me and told Brandon to take them over. Remember? It was just business. He said, you're being petty. This is revenge. I said, this is survival. You threw me out with $10,000 after 15 years. What did you expect? That I'd just disappear? His tone shifted, less anger, more desperation. Look, maybe we were hasty. Maybe we can work something out. Come back. We'll give you a raise, a better title. I said, I'm not interested. He said, Mark, be reasonable. We're friends. I cut him off. Friends don't do what you did. Friends don't plan someone's termination in secret for months. Friends don't lie about performance issues to justify firing them. Silence on the other end. Then, how do you know about that? I said, I know a lot of things, David. I know Brandon wrote that I was redundant. I know you told staff I was dropping the ball when my client satisfaction was at 97%. I know exactly who you are now. He said, if you keep this up, I'll sue you for breach of fiduciary duty. I said, go ahead. I never signed a non-compete. Check your files. You trusted me too much to make me sign one, remember? That friendship you're suddenly claiming? It goes both ways. I hung up before he could respond. My hands were shaking, but I felt alive. Amanda heard the conversation from the bedroom and came out. She said, are you okay? I said, I'm better than okay. I'm done being afraid of him. Over the next 2 weeks, more clients left Mitchell Tech. Not because I asked them to, because Brandon kept screwing up. He missed deadlines. He didn't answer calls. He tried to nickel and dime them on services I used to include free as relationship maintenance. Sarah texted me. It's chaos here. David is screaming at Brandon daily. They lost the Stevenson account yesterday, $300K annual contract. Brandon told them their concerns weren't statistically significant. They walked. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt vindicated. There's a difference. Then David showed up at my apartment. It was a Saturday morning. Amanda and I were having coffee when the doorbell rang. I opened it, and there he stood. David, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Wrinkled shirt, stubble, dark circles under his eyes. He said, can I come in? I didn't move from the doorway. I said, what do you want? He said, 5 minutes. Please. Amanda appeared behind me. She gave me a look that said, your call, and went back to the kitchen, leaving the door between us open so she could hear. I stepped outside, closed the door, crossed my arms. I said, talk. He ran his hand through his hair. The company is struggling. We've lost 11 major clients in 2 months. Revenue is down 40%. Brandon, he's not working out. I said nothing, just stared at him. He continued, I made a mistake, okay? Firing you was a mistake. I listened to Brandon, to Jessica. They convinced me you were costing too much, that we needed young talent to grow. I was wrong. I said, you think? He said, come back. Name your price. Equity, partnership, whatever you want. We can fix this together. The word together almost made me laugh. I said, you fired me in front of 12 people with 0 notice and a pathetic severance. You let Brandon trash my reputation. You told everyone I was the problem. And now you want me to save you? He said, I'm sorry. I really am. What do you want me to say? I said, there's nothing you can say, David. You showed me who you are. When things got tough, when you had to choose between loyalty and money, you chose money. You chose Brandon and Jessica's bullshit over 15 years of friendship. His face hardened. So this is revenge? Destroying my family's company? I said, I'm not destroying anything. I'm building my own company. Your clients are leaving because you provide bad service, not because I'm stealing them. That's on you. He stepped closer, voice dropping. You know what's going to happen if this continues? We'll go under. 40 people will lose their jobs. Is that what you want? The manipulation attempt was so obvious, it was almost sad. I said, those 40 people watched you humiliate me and said nothing because they were scared of you. You created that culture. You live with it. He said, Mark. I said, we're done here. Don't come back. I turned to go inside. He grabbed my arm. I yanked it away and said, touch me again and I'll call the police. He stood there, defeated, then walked back to his Porsche and drove away. Amanda said from inside, You okay? I said, yeah. For the first time in months, I actually am. 3 weeks after David showed up at my apartment, Sarah called me. Not texted, called, which meant it was serious. She said, I'm quitting. I can't take it anymore. But I wanted to warn you. David is planning something. I said, what kind of something? She said, he hired a lawyer. He's trying to build a case that you violated some kind of trade secrets law or poached clients illegally. Brandon is going through old emails trying to find anything you sent to personal accounts. My stomach tightened. I said, did they find anything? She said, not yet. But Mark, they're desperate. David took out a loan against his house to make payroll last month. Jessica is furious. She's been posting cryptic stuff on Instagram about betrayal and snakes. It's getting ugly. I thanked her and immediately called my lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chun who specialized in business disputes. She said, let them come. You didn't sign a non-compete. You haven't solicited clients. They contacted you. You haven't used proprietary information. If they sue, they'll lose and it'll cost them more money they don't have. She was right, but the stress was eating at me. Every morning, I woke up wondering if today would be the day I got served with papers. Then something unexpected happened. Tom from development, one of the guys who'd been in that board meeting when I got fired, reached out on LinkedIn. His message said, hey Mark, I know this is random, but I wanted to apologize for not speaking up that day. What David did was wrong. Also, I'm looking for new opportunities. Is Carson Solutions hiring? I stared at that message for a long time. Tom was one of their best engineers. If he left, it would be another massive blow to Mitchell Tech. Part of me wanted to say yes immediately, twist the knife deeper. But another part hesitated. Was I becoming what I hated? Was this about building something good or just destroying David? I talked it through with Amanda that night. She said, what would you do if David wasn't involved? If this was just a talented engineer reaching out to your growing company? I said, I'd hire him in a heartbeat. She said, then hire him. Don't make your decisions based on revenge. Make them based on what's right for your business. I hired Tom. I also hired Sarah when she officially quit 2 days later. By the end of the month, Carson Solutions had 12 employees and 14 active clients. We'd outgrown my apartment and moved into a small office space. Meanwhile, Mitchell Tech was hemorrhaging. I heard through the grapevine that David had fired Brandon after a massive screaming match. Apparently, Brandon had cost them another huge client by being condescending in a meeting. Then Jessica filed for separation. The Instagram post stopped being cryptic and became outright bitter. When you sacrifice everything for someone's dream and they throw it away. Everyone knew she was talking about David. His empire was crumbling, and I had a front row seat. 4 months after I started Carson Solutions, David called again. This time his voice was different, not angry, not manipulative. Broken. He said, Mark, I need to meet with you. In person, please. I said, why? He said, because I'm out of options. We met at a coffee shop downtown on a Tuesday afternoon. He looked terrible. Weight loss, hollow eyes, cheap shirt instead of his usual designer clothes. The Porsche was gone, replaced by a modest sedan. He sat down across from me and said, I'm going to lose everything. I said nothing, just waited. He said, the bank is calling in loans. We're 3 months behind on the office lease. I've got 8 employees left, and I can't make payroll next month. Jessica took half of everything in the separation. My dad won't even return my calls. He's ashamed of what I did to the company he built. I sipped my coffee. I said, why are you telling me this? He said, because you were right. About all of it. I got greedy. I listened to the wrong people. I threw away the best thing the company had because I wanted to cut costs and look like some genius CEO. His voice cracked. I threw away my best friend. For a moment, just a moment, I felt bad for him. Then I remembered that board meeting. The smirk on Brandon's face. Jessica's smile. The word redundant in that document. I said, what do you want from me, David? He took a breath. I want to sell you the company. I almost choked on my coffee. I said, what? He said, Mitchell Tech. What's left of it? The name, the client list, the infrastructure. I'll sell it to you for whatever you think is fair. You can absorb it into Carson Solutions, keep the employees who are left, take the contracts. Just save what's left of my dad's legacy. Please. The audacity was stunning. He'd destroyed his own company and now wanted me to rescue it. I said, why would I do that? Your client list is almost empty. They're already with me. Your infrastructure is outdated. Your brand is tarnished. What exactly are you offering me besides problems? He said, the name means something. My father built it over 30 years. That has to count for something. I leaned back. It counted for something when I was building it with you. It stopped counting when you fired me to save $100,000. He looked down at his hands. I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm asking anyway. Name your price. I sat there, looking at this man who'd been like a brother to me, now reduced to begging. Part of me wanted to stand up and walk away. Let him drown in the consequences of his choices. But another part, the part that Amanda had reminded me about, knew what the right answer was. I said, I'll think about it. Give me a week. I spent that week in turmoil. Amanda, Ryan, Monica, Tom, everyone had opinions about what I should do. Ryan said, don't do it. He doesn't deserve your mercy. Let him fail. Monica said, think about the employees who are still there. They didn't fire you. Some of them are good people stuck in a bad situation. Tom said, if you buy it, you're basically validating everything he did. You're rescuing him from his own mistakes. Amanda said the thing that stuck with me most. What kind of person do you want to be when this is over? Someone who won, or someone who won and stayed decent? I called Patricia, my lawyer, and asked what a fair price would be for a failing company with minimal assets. She said, honestly, in its current state, with that debt load and reputation damage, it's worth maybe $50,000. And that's being generous. You'd essentially be buying the registered business name and whatever equipment is left. $50,000. For a company that was worth millions when I was there. I thought about David's dad, Mr. Mitchell, who'd given me my first real job opportunity, who'd treated me like family at barbecues and holidays, who'd built something honest before David corrupted it. I called David and said, let's meet. We met at the same coffee shop. I slid a folder across the table. I said, here's my offer. I'll buy Mitchell Tech Solutions for $25,000. His face went pale. 25. Mark, that's. I said, let me finish. I'll assume responsibility for the remaining employees, transition them to Carson Solutions with their seniority intact. I'll honor the existing client contracts that are still active. I'll pay off the remaining office lease so you're not personally liable. He stared at the paper, doing the math in his head. That's maybe $75,000 total in commitments. I said yes, and in return, you sign over everything. The name, the assets, the contracts. You also sign a non-compete for 5 years and a legal document stating you have no future claim to anything related to the business or Carson Solutions. He said, $25,000. For my family's company. I said, for what's left of it after you destroyed it. Take it or leave it, David. This offer expires in 48 hours. He looked like he wanted to argue, to negotiate. But we both knew he had no leverage. His father's company was dying, and I was offering him a lifeboat when I could have just watched him sink. He said, why are you doing this? I said, because your dad gave me a chance once. And because I'm not you. He signed the papers that afternoon. The acquisition closed 3 weeks later. I absorbed Mitchell Tech's remaining 6 employees into Carson Solutions. Most were grateful. They'd been terrified of unemployment. A few were wary of me, wondering if I'd hold grudges. I didn't. I kept the Mitchell Tech name alive as a subsidiary, Mitchell Tech Solutions, a Carson Solutions company. It felt right to preserve what Mr. Mitchell had built, even if his son had tried to destroy it. David moved to another state shortly after. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he took a middle management job at some tech firm. No Porsche, no Instagram perfect life. Just ordinary existence. Jessica's divorce went through. She got the house, but had to sell it to cover debts. Her Instagram went private. Brandon disappeared entirely. I heard he went into real estate and was struggling. One afternoon about 2 months after the acquisition, I got a call from an unknown number. It was Mr. Mitchell. He said, Mark, I heard what you did. Buying the company, keeping the name, taking care of the employees. I said, I did it for you, sir. You gave me my start. I couldn't let it all just vanish. His voice was thick with emotion. David told me what happened. What he did to you. I'm ashamed. I raised him better than that. I said, he made his choices. We all do. He said, still, thank you for being a better man than my son was. You saved something that mattered to me. That conversation meant more than any client contract or revenue milestone. Carson Solutions kept growing. By the end of the year, we had 23 employees and $4.2 million in annual revenue. We weren't Mitchell Tech size yet, but we were profitable, sustainable, and built on actual relationships instead of exploitation. I ran into Sarah one day at a coffee shop. She was thriving in her new role at Carson Solutions, managing our finances. She said, "You know what's funny? This place feels like what Mitchell Tech used to feel like back in the early days, before David got weird." I said, "That's the goal. Build something good and keep it good." She smiled. "You did it, Mark. You actually did it." The hardest part was letting go of the anger. Some nights I'd still wake up furious, replaying that board meeting in my head. Amanda would remind me, "You won. Not by destroying him, by building something better." She was right. But healing isn't linear. Some wounds take time. 6 months after the acquisition, I got an email that made my blood run cold. The subject line read, "Legal notice, Mitchell Tech Solutions liability." It was from a law firm representing a former Mitchell Tech client, Daniels Corporation. They were suing for breach of contract and negligence. Apparently, Brandon had promised them a custom security system during his brief tenure, took a $150,000 deposit, and never delivered. Now they wanted their money back plus damages. And since I'd acquired Mitchell Tech, I was legally responsible. I called Patricia immediately. She reviewed the contract and her face went grim. She said, "This is bad. The contract Brandon signed promised deliverables that were never provided. You assumed all liabilities when you bought the company, which means this falls on you." I said, "David knew about this. He had to, and he didn't tell me." She said, "Proving he intentionally hid it is hard. But yes, he probably knew." The lawsuit was for $380,000, more than I'd made in profit that entire year. If I lost, it could cripple Carson Solutions. I tried calling David. No answer. I sent emails. Nothing. He'd ghosted completely. Then Tom found something. He was going through old Mitchell Tech servers we'd inherited, and buried in Brandon's email archive was a thread between Brandon and David from right before I bought the company. Brandon's email said, "What about the Daniels mess? They're already threatening legal action." David's reply, "Don't mention it. If Mark asks, play dumb. Once the sale closes, it's his problem." I stared at that email for a long time, feeling a familiar rage build up inside me. He'd deliberately screwed me. Even in defeat, even while I was rescuing his company, he'd planted a bomb. Patricia said, "This is fraud. We can sue David personally for fraudulent concealment. He's liable for this, not you." I said, "Will we win?" She said, "Probably. But it'll take time and money, and David doesn't have much of either anymore. You might win the case and collect nothing." I had a choice: spend months in legal battles trying to make David pay, or find another solution. I called Daniels Corporation directly and spoke with their CEO, Richard Daniels. I said, "Mr. Daniels, I understand your frustration. What Brandon did was wrong. I didn't know about this contract when I bought Mitchell Tech, but I take responsibility. Let me propose something." He said, "I'm listening." I said, "I'll refund your $150,000 deposit immediately, and I'll build the security system Brandon promised, at cost, no markup. It'll take 3 months, but you'll get exactly what you were promised." There was silence. Then he said, "Why would you do that? You could drag this through court." I said, "Because it's the right thing to do. And because your contract was with Mitchell Tech, which I now own. I'm going to honor it." He agreed. We settled the lawsuit and I delivered the system. It cost me $200,000 total between the refund and building it, but Daniels Corporation became one of Carson Solutions' biggest advocates afterward. They referred 5 new clients to us. Sometimes doing the right thing costs you, but it pays back in ways money can't measure. I still had that email thread where David told Brandon to hide the Daniels lawsuit. Patricia said I could sue him personally for fraud, and part of me wanted to. Not for the money, just to make him face consequences one more time. But Amanda asked me a question that changed my perspective. "What will that actually give you?" I thought about it. More legal fees, more stress, more months obsessing over David instead of building my company. And even if I won, he was broke. I'd get a judgment I could never collect. Instead, I did something different. I wrote everything down, the entire story, with dates, emails, and documentation. I saved it in a file labeled "The Truth About Mitchell Tech." Then I sent a single email to David with just one line. "I know what you did with the Daniels contract. I'm choosing not to pursue it legally. But we're done. Don't ever contact me again. He replied 2 hours later. I'm sorry. I was desperate. I know that doesn't make it right. I deleted the email without responding. A few weeks later, I got a LinkedIn message from someone unexpected, Brandon. It said, I know you probably hate me, and you have every right to. I was young and stupid and listened to all the wrong advice. I destroyed my reputation and burned every bridge. Just wanted to say I'm sorry for my part in what happened. I stared at that message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted to write back something scathing. But mostly I just felt tired of carrying anger. I wrote back, I appreciate the apology. I hope you learned from it. Good luck with whatever you're doing now. That was it. No friendship, no reconciliation, just acknowledgement and moving on. Carson Solutions continued growing. We hit $6 million in revenue by year 2. We won industry awards. We got written up in business journals. People started asking me to speak at conferences about building ethical companies. One day I was giving a talk at a business school, and a student asked, how do you handle betrayal in business? How do you trust people again after something like that? I thought carefully before answering. You don't let one person's betrayal make you cynical about everyone. Yes, I got burned badly, but I also found out who my real allies were. The clients who followed me valued relationships over convenience. The employees who joined me valued integrity over job security. You trust carefully, but you still trust. Because the alternative is building walls so high that nobody good can get in either. After the talk, an older man approached me. He introduced himself as a venture capitalist. He said, I've been following your story. What you did, buying your former partner's company, honoring his father's legacy despite what he did to you. That's rare. Would you be interested in discussing growth capital for Carson Solutions? 3 months later, we closed a $2 million investment round. I maintained majority ownership, but now we had the resources to scale nationally. David heard about it somehow. He sent a congratulatory email that felt hollow. I didn't respond. The best revenge wasn't destroying him. It was building something better and living well. It's been almost 2 years now since that board meeting. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Carson Solutions has 38 employees now. We just signed our biggest contract ever, $2 million, with a Fortune 500 company. The client told me they chose us because your reputation for actually caring about clients is legendary in the industry. Amanda and I got engaged 3 months ago. She stuck with me through the darkest period of my life. Never once doubted me. Never once said, I told you so. Even though she'd warned me about David's changing behavior years before I noticed. I still see Mr. Mitchell occasionally. He's proud of what I've built. He apologized again for his son's actions, and I told him what I've told him every time. You're not responsible for David's choices. I heard through the grapevine that David is doing okay now. Not great, but stable. He's managing IT projects for a healthcare company, living modestly, apparently going to therapy. Jessica remarried someone in finance. Brandon is selling insurance somewhere in the Midwest. I don't wish them harm. I also don't think about them much anymore. They're just people I used to know who made bad decisions that cost them everything. What did I learn from all this? A few things. Trust your gut. I ignored red flags for months because I didn't want to believe my best friend would betray me. Those instincts were right. Document everything. Those emails and files I saved became crucial evidence multiple times. In business, paper trails matter. Your reputation is your real asset. The clients didn't follow Mitchell Tech. They followed me because I'd spent 15 years building real relationships. You can't fake that or transfer it to someone else. Don't let betrayal make you bitter. I could have become cynical and ruthless. Instead, I chose to build something based on the values David abandoned. That decision defined everything that came after. Sometimes the best revenge is success. Not petty success meant to hurt someone else, but genuine success built on doing things right. People asked me if I regret how I handled things. Should I have fought harder legally? Should I have let Mitchell Tech die instead of buying it? Should I have publicly exposed David? Honestly, no regrets. I made choices I can live with. I didn't become the villain to defeat the villain. I stayed who I am. So to anyone reading this who's been betrayed by someone they trusted, in business, in friendship, in any relationship, here's my advice. Feel the anger. Don't suppress it. But don't let it consume you either. Use it as fuel to build something better, then let it go. Your value doesn't decrease because someone failed to see it. David thought I was replaceable. The market proved otherwise. Character matters more than short-term wins. David chose money over integrity and lost everything. I chose integrity and gained more than money could buy. And finally, some people will show you who they really are when times get tough. Believe them the first time. I'm done looking backward. Carson Solutions is my future now. Amanda is my future. The team I've built with people who share my values. That's my future. David was my past, and I'm okay with leaving him there.